Innovazioni.
Sottaceto, neve di latte e merletto carbonizzato.
Anche noi la amiamo, chef!
Non è possibile!
È morto!
Cazzo.
C'è...
What's up everyone? Thanks and welcome to Gemma Movie Recap. In this recap, we will discuss a film that has been viral recently. The film is titled The Menu. This film tells the story of a fine dining experience experienced by rich people at an exclusive restaurant called Hawthorne. But unbeknownst to the fine dining experience that was obtained was completely different from the expectations of the visitors. What kind of surprises are waiting for them? Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. At the beginning of the film, we see a couple, namely Tyler and Margot, who are about to sail to a private island, where there is an exclusive restaurant called Hawthorne. Tyler is indeed a food critic. So a fine dining experience at a Hawthorne restaurant became one of his dreams. Unfortunately, the experience of fine dining at home cannot be enjoyed by just anyone. This experience can only be felt by people who are rich and can afford fantastic prices. To go to the private island, visitors must use a boat that has been prepared by the restaurant staff. Apart from Margot and Tyler, there were several other guests who also attended the fine dining. Among them is a food critic named Lillian, and her editor named Ted. Wealthy couple Richard and Anne. Famous movie star named George and his assistant named Felicity. And three successful business people named Soren, Dave, and Bryce. Arriving at the private island, visitors are greeted by a maid named Elsa. He records one by one the guests who have made reservations. However, it turns out that Margot's name was not included in the guest list. This happened because Tyler had broken up with the woman he was going out with, and Margot was now his date who would replace his ex-girlfriend. After that, the guests were invited to tour around the island. Elsa explained that it was on the island that they developed quality ingredients which would later be processed by the chefs.
Siamo professionisti, noi.
Long story short, the fine dining event finally started. All guests are invited to sit in the seats that have been prepared while watching the reliable chefs cooking various dishes.
Innovazioni.
E sottaceto, neve di latte e merletto carbonizzato.
A manager and head chef named Julian Slowick then introduced himself in front of every guest. He is responsible for introducing each menu that will be served, as well as conveying a little message behind each of these menus. Tyler, who is a big fan of Chef Julian, of course feels touched to be able to enjoy his dish. He looks very excited and can quickly understand every message that Chef Julian wants to convey through each menu.
Isola, su un letto di ciottoli leggermente congelata e filtrata.
While Margot herself is actually just an ordinary person who just goes along and accompanies Tyler. So you can see the goal there is just to eat well and be full. But like fine dining, the menu served is usually in small portions. So Margot is not too keen to eat it. Apart from Margot, the other guests apparently felt the same way. They were a little disappointed because they had set expectations that were too high. But in fact the menu that is served is not that good, and is even considered normal, especially when Chef Julian serves several points of jam without any additional bread or condiments. This of course made some guests disappointed with the menu. On the next menu, Chef Julian presents a dish of chicken thighs which are complemented by scissor punctures. He named this menu Memory, because it was born from his childhood memories, where formerly Chef Julian had stabbed his own father's thigh because he always came home drunk and often tortured his mother. The guests began to notice that, from one menu to another, the food served was even more strange. Like when Chef Julian served a tortilla menu which instead contained disgrace belonging to the guests. This means that before the event started the chefs and staff had already found out everything about the guests who were present that night. Annoyed, Margot intends to leave the restaurant. But it is not allowed. She also chose to calm down in the toilet while smoking. Not long after, she was visited in person by Chef Julian, who was curious why Margot was not eating her dish. Impressed with indifference, Margot immediately replied that she didn't like all the menus that were served tonight. Long story short, now the guests are finally presented with the next menu. for this special menu created by a deputy chef named Chef Jeremy. He created a menu entitled The Mess, or which means chaos. What is the concept of the menu? Yep, in the true sense of chaos, Chef Jeremy was desperate to shoot himself in front of all the guests. The message he wanted to convey through the menu was well conveyed, because what he did managed to make the guests panic and there was chaos. Chef Jeremy has demonstrated a very total action, so that for the success of the menu concept, he is even willing to risk his life. Because he was no longer able to bear all this, Richard intends to leave the restaurant. But he was stopped by Elsa, who then ordered an officer to cut off one of Richard's ring fingers. What happened made the guests very scared and did not dare to try to escape. When all the guests were scared, Tyler was really amazed by the concept created by Chef Jeremy. He looked like a psychopath casually enjoying a meal in a tense atmosphere. After that, Margot was called by Chef Julian. He said that Margot was a menu spoiler, because she shouldn't have been there that night. Chef Julian personally tells Margot that tonight's fine dining will end with death. He was also given 15 minutes to make a choice, whether she would die with the staff, or die with the guests. Before the next menu was served, Chef Julian presented a very exciting show. He shows one of the biggest investors on the island about to be sunk into the sea. This was done because the investor intended to fire Julian and the staff because of what they had done. So Chef Julian and the staff worked together to kill him in front of the guests. 15 minutes later, Margot's time to think was up. When she was about to make a choice, Margot finally admitted that she was actually a call girl named Erin. She had previously been hired by Richard and then hired by Tyler for the night. After that, the next dish will begin. For this time's menu, Chef Julian handed over his position to an assistant chef named Catherine. Catherine casually explained that the menu this time was inspired by her experience when Chef Julian almost raped her. It was at that moment that she finally got her revenge by attacking Chef Julian. After that incident, Catherine then allowed the male guests to escape, while female guests will enjoy the meal with her.
È fantastico. Ne sono molto fiera.
And within 45 seconds, the other staff will catch up and catch them all.
Un boccone specie sull'uovo alla passare, con crème fraîche e
Before the next dish was served, Chef Julian approached Tyler because he had the most positive response among the other guests. Chef Julian reveals that Tyler was personally invited and already knew the event would end with everyone's deaths. So that means he asked Margot on purpose, not his ex-girlfriend. For his actions, Chef Julian deliberately humiliated Tyler by forcing him to cook in the kitchen and insulting his cooking.
Ora lo vede.
This made Tyler feel down, so he decided to commit suicide. After that, Chef Julian asked Margot to go get a big pot. Margot used this opportunity to sneak into Chef Julian's house. Arriving at the house, Margot was spotted by Elsa and immediately attacked her. There was a fight between them and ended with the accidental death of Elsa. Then Margot enters Chef Julian's room and sees a newspaper clipping about Chef Julian's past life, who worked at a fast food restaurant. Apart from that, there Margot also found a communication radio and used the radio to ask for help from the Coast Guard. It wasn't long before a beach official actually came to the restaurant.
Ha chiamato qualcuno.
Ma che fa? Ah! Cosa sta facendo a quell'uomo? Facci piano!
Che genere di problema? Lei è il padrone. Non c'è l'abitudine di servire ai nostri clienti.
Come va, Dale? Salve. Grazie infinite.
For a moment, the guests felt quite relieved to think they would be saved.
Lui, no!
Grazie, Dave. Grazie. Bravo.
However, it turns out that the beach officer is a chef in disguise. because there was no other way out. Margot was desperate to say that she didn't like Chef Julien's cooking. The portions are too small and the cooking is not good because it is not made with love. When Chef Julien asked what she wanted to eat, Margot said she ordered a cheeseburger and fries. Hearing this, Chef Julien immediately prepared Margot's order wholeheartedly. Margot then took a bite and praised her homemade cheeseburger. Then asked if she could take home the rest of the burger she hadn't eaten. Chef Julien was happy to immediately wrap food for Margot and give her gifts, and let her go.
Tutto.
After leaving the restaurant, Margot also found a ship and used the ship to escape from the island. While in the restaurant, guests are served dessert, with crumbs of biscuits on the floor and little robes made of marshmallows and hats made of chocolate. Chef Julien then burned down the restaurant and killed all the guests, staff and himself until finally the menu was finally finished. The end. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to watch other videos. See you in the next video.